Good morning, everyone. Obviously, on an agenda in front of you, but circumstances will dictate how we start the meeting off this morning. And I think it's good that we start with a minute's silence for obviously our last Queen who's passed away, and the reflection during that minute's silence. So, if you're able to, be upstanding, but thank you. Back to the order of business. The first agenda item is appointment of the chair. I would like to nominate Alan Wood.
Chair, I'm very happy to second that motion.
Are there any other nominations? Being there no other nominations, congratulations, Alan. Now we pass the agenda over to you, sir.
Second rule, my control.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you for that confidence in terms of chairing this committee, and obviously a very exciting committee in terms of the wide range of work that is that have been carried out in the last 4 or 5 years, and obviously ahead. And then obviously we look at the agenda items. You can see exactly how things are in terms of the exciting future, hopefully, in terms of transport, particularly in the Strathclyde and the rest of Scotland. Okay, do we have any apologies?
We do, Chair. We've got apologies from appointed member Anne Folin, from Councillor Washington, Councillor Lennox, Councillor O'Donnell, and Councillor Thompson. And I believe you may have apologies yourself directly from Councillor Edwards.
Councillor Edwards, yeah. And okay, no apologies. Before we move on, just a welcome to Councillor Sinclair and Councillor Gordon Curry. To see a face from the past, good to see you from North Lanarkshire, and I think we've got everybody, and Councillor O'Donnell from East Wren, who's online. I can just see that. So welcome to our new members with the change to take place recently. Welcome. Okay, moving on to declarations of interest. I would just pick that one up by being employed of Scotland and also as of June. Anybody else got any declaration of interest?
Chair, I'm advising North Ayrshire Council on transport for Arran and Cumbria.
Okay. Anybody else see any indications from the screen? So okay, that's us on that one. Moving on to the minutes of the 18th of February. I guess that these are already been in partnership, and so therefore that's very much for one. So that reads. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5, revenue monthly report. It has a 4 ending 23rd July 2022 and updated financial forecast for financial year 2022-2023, pages 7 to 26, and the committee action is outlined on page 9. Neil, can you take us through this?
Yep, thanks, Chair. So the overall position is forecast for small and trend of just over £766,000 or 2%. As you can imagine, as detailed section, there are a number of considerable factors within that. First of all, in terms of salaries, we have forecast the year end for the proposed provisional pay award. That leaves us almost flat in salaries. That's due to the offset in terms of the vacancies that we've got, which we're actively trying to fill. Second thing, I noted there in terms of inflation obviously a factor for ourselves as well as all other organisations. Biggest single item for us in terms of electricity, we are forecasting beyond budget, but that is reflecting the fact that there's a 40% increase in budget in here, so significant increase to cover the expected cost that there was. The biggest risk that we see at the moment, though, and it's something which has been discussed at length at the Operations Committee and continuing to be discussed at length, relates to bus operator payments. Recent renewals that we took to the Operations Committee for July were at an average increase of 18%. We do at this point in time, we are forecasting to be flat, but the risk remains, as things change, as the funding ends for in terms of COVID support to bus operators in October. There's an announcement this week in terms of the Scottish budget in relation to concession travel funding as well. So we're always alert to this market, the potential pressures that come to us and trying to fill services that may be withdrawn or amended through the change of funding. So it remains a significant risk for the organisation. On the positive side, stopping incomes recovered to around 85% of pre-COVID levels, which is excellent. Albeit, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say that that's still 50% adrift. That's a significant income which is still lost us. What we haven't done yet is we haven't forecast that all the way through to the year end. We're staying prudent until we see the student recovery or the student season effectively as we go through September and October. At the moment, it's looking positive, but the universities aren't back until a couple of weeks' time. We're particularly alert to what might happen in terms of under 22s with new students. We would hope to continue to capture students that are using survey, but there is a challenge in terms of those who are coming into the market in the first place. I've got an option of free bus pass versus actually using survey. Having said that, I'm optimistic that when we come to this committee again in November, that we'll be in a more positive position. Finally, we're experiencing a positive movement, as you've seen in both terms of interest received. That's solely down to the movement in the base rates and the impact in terms of our investment rates. That in itself is the single biggest factor in the overall forecast. So overall, as I said at the start, a positive variance of £767,000. Some risks and opportunities in there. I think I also have to say that in terms of the overall position where we might end up this financial year, it's worth just reminding members that that's only possible because of the measures we put in place in the budget for this year, with some significant reductions, particularly in terms of the contribution to the Survey Fund. And it's also possible despite the fact that we've not had any COVID support since September 21. So, Chair, I'd ask members to note the outcome and also the uncertainties that remain in terms of the projections.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Anybody got any comments or questions? Ed. Sorry, Ed.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think I've asked this question in previous meetings about the fact that you managed to have a sort of balanced salary scenario because of having vacancies to fill. Question is that what's the impact of the fact that those vacancies aren't filled? And the second one is when they are filled, what impact would that have going forward?
Neil.
Okay, thanks, Ed. We've made real significant progress in terms of operational vacancies. So we are pretty much back to where we would expect to be, albeit in terms of what's happening in the job market again, which is well commented now. There's still a chunk, there's still a fluctuation there, so we can never be guaranteed that we're going to maintain to this establishment level at any point in time, but we're pretty much up there operationally. Significant challenge is still really biggest area I would say is the digital area that I mentioned before, and the impact on the organisation is we're not able to advance some of our programmes as quickly as we would like to. So we're able to maintain what we've got, but we're not able to advance as quickly as we would in other enhancements. So that's the impact.
Okay. So I mean, but is that having specific? You're not able to advance on what impact is that having the organisation going forward? In terms of delays, there's programmes which are necessary that are not being actively staffed at the moment.
That I would say is an enhancement programmes. So there are systems and processes already in place, but we would like them to be improved. So yeah, I mean, I can't say that there's not a negative impact because we wouldn't be looking to fill those, unless we needed them. But the impact is about in terms of development rather than there being specific gaps or weaknesses that I would say that we need to address.
Anybody else got?
Yeah, sorry, on it's page 12. It was under third-party payments, we've got a budget of 2.9 million, and the actual figure is 1.8. What's the variant? That's quite a substantial difference. What is that?
At this stage, I mean, the key element of that variance is that we did have significant concerns at the time we set the budget in terms of inflation pressures, particularly around about the bus market. So we have a corporate allowance in there for inflation, which hopefully will be sufficient, you know, if that comes to bear in any kind of heavy wave between now and the end of the financial year.
I mean, I see at the end of the projected outcome and annual outcome is pretty even, but it just obviously the actual amount is obviously quite a substantial amount lower than your budget.
Yeah, I would say that it's a prudent forecast, and just because there are potentials for significant changes, particularly in the bus market at any point in time, we wouldn't be forecasting that to be under until we had more certainty in terms of what's happening in the marketplace and actually more time in terms of the financial year. We're not fully halfway through the financial year yet.
Yes, thank you for the report. It's interesting reading, and it's a learning process for me when I get my head around it all and figures and grappling with it all.
It's a learning process for everybody.
I had some perhaps basic questions that I thought would still be useful to ask. And I noticed that on page 10, it kind of describes the budgeting for 3% pay increase, but the COSLA is striking at 5%. So I just wanted to ask how the Scottish Government is obviously providing financial assistance in that regard. But how much does this cover of the 0.48 million shortfall, given that it is a different figure than we expected?
Yeah, in terms of the direct impact on SPT in this financial year, I don't actually expect to see any support flowing through to the SPT. Basically, what happens in terms of our funding agreement with the local authorities, and we have an agreement in place with our 12 funding local authorities that we receive the average settlement that they receive in the year, which is set at the time of the Scottish budget in terms of February, March. There are fluctuations that happen through the year at all points for different things. Those are generally not reflected in adjustments for SPT because they can be, you know, there can be specific things regarding education or social work or whatever it would be. So that principle is applied again this year. How that's then applied into the baseline for next year, not entirely clear yet, but we believe it will be the baseline next year, and that would be a positive way to SPT next year.
Question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the subway fund. Obviously, that's a big impact of where the finances sit and the support of the subway fund being withdrawn or severely reduced. I just wanted to ask, first of all, what is the subway fund? And secondly, what is the impact of that being significantly reduced?
Thanks, Al. Okay, so the subway fund is a fund that we created as we went through modernisation to build the contribution that SPT needs to make to modernisation. The modernisation programme is 288.7 million, up to 246 million from government and the balance from SPT own resources. So as we were going through the programmes and having gone through the programme, we've been building the fund to make sure that SPT can fulfil their own part of that agreement. Over and above that, there are a number of things that the fund's required for. There will be, and we are determined that what we'll be doing in terms of this infrastructure we put in place, that it will be managed and maintained and financed in an appropriate way through its life cycle. So when we get through the first major refurb, which is expected to be, I think it's 10 years into the programme, and we'll have to fund that. So again, we've been building that fund to make sure that we can cover that in terms of the major refurbs. Third thing is that we will be having, and it's still to be fully developed, there will be a change in operation. Some of it, you know, everybody's heard the discussion of driving trains and what the impact that has in terms of the system overall. There are likely to be significant changes in terms of how we operate the subway, and there may be costs related to that in terms of staff. So again, subway funds required to take us through that period. And the fourth thing is that and we're in this period just now, we're in a period where we've got new and old at the same time, and we have to maintain both. We have to develop two, and then we're going to have a period where we're maintaining both at the same time, and that means not exactly double cost, but extra cost. So again, we have to make sure we've got resources to be able to resource that. And the impact, sorry, you asked, the impact is that we paused it and we hope that pause is only for 1 year. So we think that's manageable. You'll see later in the year we'll be bringing a refresh of the long-term financial strategy and we'll address that directly there.
Yes, anybody else got any questions? Slip the screen, communication, please. I mean, I would just say is, you know, I think the reason report is a kind of snap in time in terms of where things are financially. But page 8 and 9, you've got the 7 bullet points in terms of variances and areas like this. And I think very much going to capture the challenges going ahead. The bit I was going to, when we spoke about it, the pre-agenda thing, that's the top bullet point on page 9. And I know Chief Executive has been in communication with Transport Scotland in relation to seeking support in terms of the COVID support grant. We had that discussion, so we don't be response. So this one got a response. I think the government maybe on that one.
No direct responses yet, Chair.
I think the chair as well, as well. So okay, so we'll just watch this space on that front. Okay, anybody else? Any questions, comments? If not, can we agree the committee actions as an outline page 9? Is that agreed? Okay, moving on to agenda item 6, 2021-22, capital outcome and capital programme monitoring. Proposed amendments, that's page 27 to 44, and the action is outlined on page 31. Let's do it again.
Thanks, Chair. If we move to table 4 on page 29, and the elements before that are just background to set the context of the report. So you look at table 4 and you see line 5 under general capital, getting variance of 5.2 million. So that's an overcommitment of 5.2 million, 24%. And that's a planned position to allow for slippage in the programme as we go through the year. So move on to the current situation in period 4, which is in section 5.1 with all the details in appendix 1. We've got a spend at period 4 of 5.1 million against planned expenditure of 7.767 million. So we are a bit adjusted in terms of period 4 already. You'll see from appendix 1, the majority of the variances comes from local authority projects, and I'll touch on that again and talk about the next steps. In terms of the amendments, which are listed in 6.1 and detailed in appendix 2, there are 8. And they represent a net increase of £455,000 at this point. So the net result is shown in table 5 on page 30. No change in the programme for modernisation. For general capital, that £455,000 movement takes the projected variance of the overcommitment down to 4.676 million or 22%. We will see more movement than that will come in. So the reality is that in period 4, the programme's already shown some significant savings. And that will translate into more amendments later in the year and programme over time. Our team will work with project managers both internally and also with local authorities between now and this committee in November to identify the slippage, because we need to make sure that we put control, we don't slip too far the other way. And under the funding that's available, we will be bringing proposals in November, and we're looking to get project managers to overcome the natural optimism they also have and give us some reality about where things sit and how that impacts the programme. So that's the general position, Chair. The committee's asked to know various things in section 7, but probably the most important thing is the approval of this 7.2 in terms of the amendments in appendix 2.
Thanks. Obviously look forward to getting feedback in terms of separate local authorities in terms of how they're coping and otherwise in terms of the different projects. Any questions or comments?
Chair?
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you good, George?
Well, thank you. It's just really a comment, and I don't think there's anything you can do about it. But having done some work, as I said, for North Ayrshire and knowing the island on Arran, there's an increasing number of cyclists from Brodick up north to Loch Ranza in groups, sometimes large groups. And I know it's getting a difficult situation with a narrow road and vehicles taking chances on that road. And so it's particularly disappointing that landowner consent hasn't happened. So it's really just to note that you know, as soon as this can be resolved, the better in terms of safety on the island.
Is there any details, observation, that comment on this?
I take it, George, is that the project which is brought into Quarry Cycle Path?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, again, that's one of the things that we expect to bring forth more detail in November. You know, particularly those land purchase issues, then that would tend to not program, you know, probably into the next financial year. So, but we'll address that in November.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, anybody else got any questions, any comments? Okay, that's not going to agree that my actions outlined in page 3031 is that agreed? Great. Moving on to agenda item 7, the annual treasury management report. That's page 45 to 54. I think 51, 52. So that's still ahead.
Thanks, Chair. So this is an important compliance report, as detailed section 2 and actually the length of section 2 in terms of the background, I think, lays that out. I'll just go through very briefly the different elements of the report, just bring out the highlights. Section 3 is a short economic commentary, and it's really just there for the background to get context. Section 4 notes the capital expenditure for the last 3 years and related funding, and that's done partly because of the impact in capital expenditure and treasury management overall, also because in itself it's a prudential indicator. In terms of Section 5 lays out SPT's portfolio position. 2 key elements in there. One is that we've got an increase in investments level to 178.6 million. And secondly, our interest earned last year fell to £491,000. And that is really due to the decrease, the emergency decreases in base rates around the UK due to COVID. We'll touch on it later on, but we will see that significant change in that and an increase in that in 2022-23. Section 6, in terms of the prudential treasury management indicators, the key point is the last point. We operated within our prudential treasury management indicators in full for 21-22. Similarly, for Section 7, in terms of investment strategy, the investment strategy is followed full. Section 8, investment outturn, you'll see a table there with the various accounts. Due to market conditions, you see in terms of liquidity on the right-hand side, most of those were instant access or short-term notes. That's not normal, and that's because the rates that were on offer with the absolute decrease in base rates for fixing money and for the potential increase in base rates to come meant that we didn't fix. We had to go liquid in terms of preserving the future position. The rates you see there, the average rate very low. We did manage to perform the benchmark. The benchmark was 0.14% and we got 0.28%. So it's good that we outperformed it, but in terms of financial impact, it's negligible. I do expect to see that to move back between 22-23. So in conclusion, Chair, per Section 10, we have operated in full in terms of the potential treasury management indicators and forward investment strategy in full. If I can just ask one point in terms of committee action, asking what the contents report in Section 0.2 should actually state no potential treasury management indicators rather than proof. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Neil. Anybody, any questions?
Yeah, in the light of the government's proposal to borrow 150 billion on the markets, how do you see that affecting interest rates going forward? And would you factor that into your requirements?
That's an interesting question. Thanks, Ed. That's a good one. I'm not sure at this stage. I mean, we are seeing real, at last, we're seeing real positive movement. For us, I mean, it's not necessarily people in their personal life, but we're seeing real positive movements for us in terms of investment returns and a bit of competition in the market. That may be an increased competition. I'm not sure. I think I'd have to go back and see how that one develops.
Okay, interesting problem.
Okay, thanks.
Just a quick one. Sorry, I'm new, okay? I mean, that's a huge amount of money invested. What is our, are we restricted in what we can do there? Is that government bonds, or I mean, how does that come about as such?
Two things. Do you mean how did the values come about, or how do we invest it?
How do we invest it?
So basically, we are governed by the Prudential Code. So that covers all over authority bodies in the UK.
Right.
So we follow what's within that. There is room within that for us to set our own standards, and we do that, and that comes to committee for approval. So that comes to committee as part of the annual treasury management strategy, which is 3 year. So this is the results of the treasury management strategy for 21-22, 22-23 strategies we set already. We allow ourselves, so investment in UK institutions, government bonds, yes, debt management office. There are various, I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but I can get the last piece certainly. Actually, I can give you the committee report from March, which details them all out. We set within the Prudential Code our own parameters. When I say we set them, the partnership does.
Right, okay, I mean, yeah, okay, the Prudential Code, I'm probably not sure what that is actually, to be honest, but I mean, how does that differ to likes of a pension fund or something like that? I'm just, I mean, I've got to understand in my head.
Yeah, no,
You know, so, I mean, how does that, because obviously pension funds can, you know, create a fair substantial amount of income, and it just didn't appear to be a huge amount from the amount that we're investing there. And I just wondered, you know, is there options there to get different things like that?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of our treasury management strategy, securities first, that's the first priority, and that's
Risk.
So that's agreed by the partnership.
Right.
So that also factors into everything else, you know, in terms of what we do and how we invest. Basically, the Prudential Code is setting standards in terms of what the type of institutions you would invest with, the financial rating you have in the marketplace. You're so making sure that you're not investing in anything which is higher risk, even within your own, you know, your own parameters.
Yeah.
It also determines spread within your own criteria to set within your code, but what your spread would be, again, to manage your risk position, both in terms of institutions, spread in terms of terms, types of investment, etc. So it's basically it's a set of rules and guidance which is to try and make sure that organisations control their treasury management in a considerable planned way. Essentially, the Prudential Code came out of the effects of BCCI in 1987. I mean, that's really where it came from.
Yeah.
In terms of everything into local authorities then.
Okay, no.
Yeah, no, thanks, Donald, thanks for the question. David, do you want to come in?
No, Neil was more or less answered it. William is to stop us having speculative investments. Because at one time, Western Isles Council, and I think it was Northampton Council, does speculative investments where they caught a cold. They thought, well, we can do better than 2% by doing this. So it's to make sure that we are very restricted in what we can do. I know there's some would like to put it all on the favourite Kempton Park this afternoon, but oh man.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, Chair, actually, in terms of England House at the moment, there are still issues in terms of speculative investments, particularly local authorities investing in property. So that still exists there, as well as the Prudential Code. There is a different culture in Scotland. Actually, so we're part of the benchmarking club in Scotland at those very low rates that we've got that we've achieved. Pretty positive compared to other years.
I think what I was trying to say there, and I mean, obviously there's going to be an uplift in things like renewables and things like that. I was just, you know, if that was something that we would potentially be looking at, because it is going to be a massive investment in the UK.
Yeah, but if I could just add, if I was to go through the three priorities in terms of a treasury management strategy, it's security, then it's liquidity, then it's return. So in terms of, you know, investment in renewables, you're looking at a, you know, a very long-term investment, and the funds that we've got are not all ring fence, but it's a high proportion of a ring fence. So again, that mitigates against having to see a 10-year investment.
Yeah, I don't know. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. Nobody on the screen looking to ask anything? No, okay. Can we agree the report as on outline page 51, 52, is that agreed? Great, thank you. Thank you. And moving on to agenda item 8. That's Glasgow City Union City Deal, update on Eastern Marshall Council place and 5 to 58. Actions on page 57 in Scotland.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Chair, just cover some of the key highlights from the paper. I'm conscious of the number of new members, so provided within the paper some background in terms of the objectives. of the programme, Eastern Berkshire, and also the kind of key elements which I've summarised as the Wester Hill Development Road through the Wester Hill area, which is a new road to support development and connectivity in that area. The A803 sustainable travel corridor, which will include bus priority measures along the corridor, ambition brings town centre regeneration. Again, below there, some of the deliverables will be journey time improvements, service improvements, improvements to the quality of infrastructure, accessibility and information provision. The total cost of the project is estimated at 35 million, with 38 million coming from Glasgow City Region City Deal, and a further 5 million coming from Eastern Berkshire Council. In terms of SPT support for the project, we sit on the project steering group, a collaborative group with Eastern Berkshire Council and also colleagues from Glasgow City Council, given the cross-boundary nature of the project there. In terms of the airline proposal, we're back page 56 and 57. Provides you an update on the key statutory deliverables to take the project forward. So the business case development, consultants appointed, and we're underway for developing the business case work required. And that's important given the Glasgow City Region approvals programme, that essentially we need to complete the business cases to allow the funds for the later stages of the project. To support that, there's transport modelling ongoing, specific work on efficient town centre regeneration in terms of design and consultation with the local community and businesses. Wester Hill master plan and development of the road, essentially looking at master planning for the Wester Hill area and also the alignment of that road, which plan can be to support that. And a key one in terms of SPT's input, improvements to the sustainable transport and the A803 corridor. Design work underway there with consultants appointed here. And a number of other points there. So I think, Chair, just really to keep the committee appraised of progress in this regard, and the SPT continue to support colleagues at Eastern Berkshire Council with development and delivery of this scheme going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody get any questions? Or just I'll ask a question. So you're interested if possible. Are we content in terms of progress pace of this? I mean, I'm particularly mindful that the City Region deals as a number of deals under that umbrella. Go back some, I think the time as we sat there on this, because obviously this was approved just over 2 years ago. Are we content that this moving satisfactory pace?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the answer is probably more content than we may have been. And it's kind of detailed within the report. We've seen some of the key consultants appointments to take forward major elements of the programme. So there was some concern we were in the pace of those, but we're starting to see traction in terms of getting the consultants appointed. I think there will be a challenge both in terms of inflationary pressures with the city projects that are seen across the board, and also the timeline. I think completion is around estimated 2026. I think both of those will be a challenge going forward. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think people can look at when the sons and money were allocated all the different projects, I was in a different world, and it's kind of really concerning about how much bang we're going to get for the work. Right across the various projects, so we're interested to see how that evolves. Have we got a kind of a date in the diary in relation to so how we can evaluate how good or otherwise progress is for this particular project, given that's an statement?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As I said, we sit on the steering group, the collaborative group with Eastern Berkshire and Glasgow represented on there. There's regular updates in terms of the programme, in terms of the progress there, and we'll bring back further updates to the committee in due course to keep the rest of them.
Yeah, obviously it's not just Eastern Berkshire, it's a Glasgow project as well. So, we'll certainly monitor how things develop. Anybody, any questions, comments? No? Okay, can we agree the actions as they're outlined on page 57, is that agreed? Great. Good. Moving on to agenda item 9, the small matter of strategic issues update. Also, reason there's a few pages, but I like a lot of them in it. So the strategic issue, the update, the SPT area, page 59 to 64, the right action is outlined in page 63. Bruce?
Well, sorry, yeah, just a few highlights, Chair, I think, from this, because as you say, there's a lot in it. Just that section 3.1 there is probably a bit longer than we would usually do. There's an awful lot happening over the last few months, and to be honest with you, Chair, it doesn't make for particularly pleasant reading. COVID's still having a massive impact, obviously, but now we've got the double whammy really of the cost of living crisis, and that's changing as we move pretty much every day. Actually, public transport is still down. We've got some huge challenges for operators, particularly bus operators, coming up with the network support grant being withdrawn or finishing around about September, and really need to see the impact of that around particular service registrations or withdrawals. I do finish though with a bit of positives though. There is going to be a national campaign led by Transport Scotland to get people back on public transport, which is good. There's going to be a more local one as well for Glasgow city centre, led by the Chamber of Commerce, and there's going to be a big promotion on under 22s as well. Get people to sign up for that. The question really is, will that be enough? And I think that's something that we're all going to be closely monitoring. Other highlights, I suppose, Chair, section 3.2.1 in the Transport Act. Just to note that we will be bringing forward some proposals, myself and Gordon, on bus and the future of bus to the Strategy and Programmes Committee in November. That will obviously take account of the RTS public consultations. So we'll look forward to doing that. That will set up a programme for more than that. 331, just in the RTS consultation, going very well, good levels of response. I've been doing a lot of meetings and presentations to elected members and officers for the last few weeks and will continue to do so. 333 in the Bus Partnership Fund, just to look at the last two paragraphs of that section on the Community Bus Fund, just to highlight, just shows you how much things change. We advised yesterday, Chair, that the Community Bus Fund has now been paused for the foreseeable future, and we'll keep you posted on that. And last but not least, in 335, the Transport Summit, the work's ongoing to get that arranged, and save the date, and things will be coming out early next week. Next could be arranged for end of October, 27th of October to see that. Save the dates and next week. That's actually it.
Thanks, Bruce. Again, a lot in this paper. Just going to catch you just say that the community bus fund, and that's just off the press, which is really just sort of obviously colleagues, people, operations, we all know what community transport has done in terms of transformational in many cases in terms of where the bus market is failed and bus transport has basically stepped up. So and what you're talking about here is £1 million for it, which in the scheme of things isn't a lot of money if it's good spread across Scotland, but it does make a big, massive difference in terms of some of the services that these organisations do. We've got quite a few in the West, so I guess we need to kind of keep our eye on that one, and that's a concern. And I'm just wondering whether, obviously, we discussion effective. I think maybe a conversation in terms of maybe concerns on that front. Maybe make the necessary representations to make sure. We need to fight for the community bus services that are out there because they do a fantastic job. So I think we have a conversation about that and necessary representations on that front. So we need to talk about that offline. And obviously, as you say, the next SPT is a date for diary in terms of November in relation to some aspects, particularly the issue of transport. Anybody, any questions, comments?
No, all right. it's difficult at the present moment with bus transport. I mean, it does seem to be that it's not being utilised. Are we having any conversations with Scottish Government, to potentially substantially reduce the bus prices? I mean, Europe have, and a number of countries have reduced it. I mean, the price of fuel is at a ridiculous level, and we all want to, invest in sustainable ways of transport, and a bus is a great way of doing it. But, is there any discussions on that?
I mean, there is significant decisions been made south of the border in relation to Western freezing the fares, capping the fares like £2. I mean, I know I'm born in Manchester, but they've already kind of flag that one up this month. But that's been spread out the rest of England. I don't know cities we will. But in terms of the wider engagement, when I think Gordon and Bruce combined to add that percent, I think the short answer definitely has been that engagement. But
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to highlight two things that one that's slightly different with the board moving the announcement on under 22s. The rule on under 22s concessionary travel is different to typical south of the border, so effectively fares being removed for those who can get a card, who access the card and can get a bus to localise it. The other point I was going to raise is why I think Bruce and I feeding into this is Transport Scotland's fares review, which I believe is underway, and to Bruce maybe will add, I believe it has been accelerated given the challenges that we're facing.
Yeah, I mean, I get the under 22s, but for the rest of us, whatever, I mean, that market is, over 22s is probably the biggest market out there, and I'm concerned as well when we get to December, and then you've got your fare rises based on the way that inflation has gone, and there's going to have to be action at that point in time.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think that kind of squeezed middle, I think you could call it, for the people who are not unfortunately under 22 or over 60 or who are eligible for discounts. It's a massive issue. It's a rich person's game sometimes travelling by bus.
Yeah.
And that's a very challenging situation. So as Gordon's saying, the fares review, as Gordon says, Transport Scotland are committed to doing that because of concerns across the country on fares, how we can make that work better. That work was originally supposed to complete at the end of 2023, which we raised our eyebrows at, I must admit, as in many people. But we're now told that that's been accelerated and it will complete by the end of March 2023, which is soon. And just to say as well, we did a piece of work as part of the regional transport strategy development on the affordability of public transport, and that's why you'll see in the draft RTS there's a lot in there to say we need to work on how we can get this out. Just as you're saying, Chair, just worth highlighting some of the things that are going on down south. So the DfT, as Gordon said, they've put £60 million forward to cap all bus fares in England to £2 from January to March 2023. We've also, I think the figure is 130 million. We've also agreed to continue the support grant for bus operators down there, thereby preserving some of the network. There's no point getting a discount or having a concessionary travel card feeding of a bus. I think that's a really important move that they've made. And up here, we've got network support grant, it's been withdrawn or finishes, the money runs out about September, and it's really a case of wait and see. So I think over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, how long is of COVID, I know Gordon's been in weekly calls with Transport Scotland and in regular engagement with Valerie and our chair that made representations to Transport Scotland as far as with subway and bus go. So we're in a very good position with Transport Scotland. They know our position. We just need to see some action.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely get that, but I mean, talking about it all the time and not actually doing anything. And Councillor Wilson there will maybe clarify how hard buses are, you know, how they're struggling at the present moment
Well, they're struggling enormously. I had a meeting with McGill's and we went through every single service that we got in the west of Scotland. Every single one was down significantly based on 2019 figures. And an incredible number of them were unprofitable. And that really bodes badly, particularly, I think, in urban areas, because where you might have a 15-minute service, that will go to half an hour. Or a half-hour service will go to an hour. The service is going to get degraded.
I just think talking is one thing, but actually action, we need to put bumps in seats, you know.
But I did suggest to Ralph Roberts, the chief executive of McGill's, perhaps you could reduce your fares. I was more or less shown the door.
I mean, what would say, William, in terms of the frustration, the frustration is shared by quite a lot, is, I mean, and we've had discussions on this area for too long, and you know, things have got in the roads in terms of COVID and different aspects, you know, on the road in terms of taking things forward. We did do a paper in the last term to discuss the choices that needs to be made, because quite frankly, the status quo in terms of bus transport isn't an option. And you know, we put forward a paper, and I think it's going to be part of the discussion in terms of the visual transport strategy. And obviously that's out for discussion and feedback will come in. And it's going to be, that's why at the November meeting, once we get that concluded, that is going to be absolutely fundamental in terms of our position going forward. One of the things that I've came across the years of being involved in SPT is, regardless of political variations around this table over the years, that is a common denominator. The status quo is not an option. We just spoke about community transport, basically plugging the gaps, and we're now talking about pulling that £1 million. They're providing actually a lifeline to many of these communities. So, I mean, we've got obviously the bus strategy that's going to come through. I'm hoping that the SPT will be very, very clear about its direction in terms of, travel. You know, in that paper, 3.35, we've got some SPT transport summit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that I think will be a interesting time day in terms of discussion on that. But what I would say is, I think we're kind of getting to that point where SPT is going to be dealing with colours very much to the wall in terms of what direction. But the bus industry has got real big, massive challenges. The finance for the operator, it's not anti-client operator, it's just the way it is just now. The operators have got the funding to October. That announcement going beyond that is a question mark. And we all know whether it's a rural area or whether it's an urban area, because both of the cases it's really, really difficult in terms of isolation. And I think, particularly for George's book, we need to change the language in terms of when we talk about bus transport and transport in general, is we need to start talking in terms of investment, in terms of supporting education, the economy, social inclusion and many other things that are brought health. So it's important we deal with close to the last price stream, and I think we're kind of getting to that point in that junction. Well, you recommend?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just perhaps to add to a point, Councillor Sinclair, one point of it. There's a challenge in respect to affordability. There's also the challenge in terms of structural change that we're seeing in different things. Councillor Wilson touched on it. For example, peak services have not returned because the commuter market has not returned the same volume. And also one of the one things that we've seen during the last few years is the concession market. Hasn't returned the numbers that were anticipated. That's one of the big areas there. Perhaps linked to the cost of living crisis. We don't have money in your pocket to spend, your pocket to travel. So there's a number of structural issues, but there's my point alongside, I think, that funding and regulatory challenge, there's a little bit of challenge to see.
Okay, I see Councillor Mitchell in, I'll bring in next on. David first, and then I'll bring yourself in, Malcolm, okay? Just
Very, very briefly, Chair. The other major thing that's happening is home working and hybrid working. People are not going into the offices as much, and we've already seen services like one from Ardrossan to Glasgow, there's one in South Lanarkshire from Biggar to Edinburgh. People are not using it as much because people are at home now. I know particularly there is the X7 that runs from Kilmacombe and Bridgewere up to Glasgow. Its patronage is almost halved because people in Kilmacombe are working from home. They're not going into their office in Glasgow any longer. And that, when the subsidy runs out, this is really significant in October, when the bus companies stop having the subsidy, I really worry for the number of bus services we might see getting curtailed. Thank you, Chair.
Malcolm again.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I got a few questions and observations, mainly to do with buses. I suppose one of the things that was in the report was about the RTS, and I know that that's the consultation's live on that at the moment. And we're looking at that. I just wonder how challenging that is, given that, you know, the full guidance as it relates to things like franchise and BSIPs isn't coming out to next year. I wonder if it's a case of we're considering things with an expectation of what the guidance is going to be, but we don't know fully yet, and if that may have to change further down the line. I appreciate the RTS, those are kind of a bit the longer term, certainly in the short term. You know, stuff like bus corridors, I saw it was in there. I'm certainly, you know, keen to see how that develops. A couple of the proposed bus corridors are in my own ward. You know, the debate that's just gone on, you know, about the cost of, you know, actually travelling in buses, I think is really important. You know, even for me, for example, if I was to travel from, you know, where I'm just now to Central Station, you know, on a bus, the cheapest option to get there and back would be £4.50 through the app, whereas on a train I could get there for £3.40. You know, certainly when I was a bit younger, the train was seen as more of the luxury option to go on, but in some cases now it's cheaper. On the kind of flip side, I suppose, from high fares to no fares, and it's already been mentioned, you know, people with concessionary travel, particularly, you know, older people. I've certainly heard anecdotally, at least, I know in the report, the kind of theory was put out there that people are maybe not using it because they can't afford to, you know, do anything once they get the bus to a place, like go to shops and spend money because of the cost of living crisis. I wonder though, and I've certainly heard this anecdotally, you know, that certainly some older people are a bit anxious about travelling on the bus itself, in terms of whether it's, you know, being in a confined space with a lot of people with COVID hasn't disappeared, despite the fact we don't really discuss it anymore, and even just social anxiety after being in the house for such a long period of time. So I'm glad to hear that you know, there's going to be a campaign to encourage people back into public transport, but I wonder if we could, you know, feed into that and, you know, highlight specifically older people, I think. And just, you know, on the under 22 issues, I think one of the things, and, you know, I've heard this from a lot of people, there are challenges and for some people in actually securing the pass. And there's a real variation across local authorities in terms of being able to get the under 22 passes. So I know that it's for local authorities to deal with that themselves, but I don't know if there's any role for SPT to even contact councils just to encourage them to do everything they can on that. And I just have one very brief final thing, and this is about rail. I know the kind of national conversation about rail is mentioned in the report as well. I don't know if there has been any, and I don't mean anything serious, but even any conversations, any considerations, whether it's been looked at all, the possibility of any in the future regionalisation of our railways. I appreciate that's a lot. That's me, Chair. Thank you.
A lot, Brian and Christie, just now, because good question there. So, Bruce, on you, Bruce want to do, I'll start with Bruce, yeah.
Well, thanks for the questions, about really interesting. So in terms of the RTS consultation, The guidance, as you're saying, guidance and regulations, we're waiting on those of franchise plus service improvement partnerships. They're not due until sometime in 2023, as you're saying. That won't affect anything that we want to do. We'll carry on. We can do preparatory work. We've got a good handle on what the legislation says and how that will translate into guidance. We'll obviously be mindful, and when it comes out, whether it's B6 franchising, whatever it might be, we'll take account of that. That's not a problem. Really good point about the concessionary travel, about old people still being anxious. I think that's not really applying across society. There's still a age group is still some groups are, some people still very concerned about going on to it. I know the Transport Scotland been doing the national campaign. It'll be for everybody, so whether you're young, old, rural, urban, it'll be very much get back onto public transport, get out there and enjoy yourself. But it's a really good point, and I'll take a note of that to emphasise that there should be something focusing over people. Just in the national conversation on rail about regionalisation, it's really something, I have to be honest with you, that's dropped off the radar over the last few years, but there is a bit more talk about it. When Transport Scotland approached us and said, we're going to be going to 1st of April 2022, the public sector will take ScotRail back into its arms. We want to fill in a role for regional transport partnerships like SPT. We said, well, what do you mean? Well, we just want a stronger role. So we said, well, can we help define what that stronger role is? Because we have got a stronger role, both in our previous history as a passenger transport executive and as an RTP. We've done some of the biggest rail projects on the certified network. So that dialogue's ongoing. So how we make that work for us, again, we'll wait and see, but the door's open, and we're looking to get some form of concordat with ScotRail about what our future relationship looks like. So who knows what happens.
Before we go on, and Neil's going to touch base in the under 22s, I think one of the sort of threads that kind of goes through a lot of the questions there is the issue of accessing information, accessing and data. And one of the things that through officers making representations to the Transport Scotland on the back of the hundreds of millions of pounds that's been given quite rightly to keep the bus industry moving over the COVID period. We have not been able to get, if you like, any access from that. And one of the big asks is, to me, as a big mission. I think it's something that needs to go to in the run up to October in terms of potential future funding, is the ability to access that data and that information so that us in the West, in the SPT area, can shape transport. Because without data and information, that is a major big piece of jigsaw that's missing. And the thing is this, that Transport Scotland does have that information, because usually the thing has been in the past is it's commercially sensitive, but because of the under 22s, the concession affair, the data, so there is information and data. And I think it's absolutely key, that engagement with Transport Scotland themselves, making sure that we are, when taxpayers' money is getting used to prop up the market, which is struggling, that we get access. And I think, getting that idea is, quite frankly, a basic piece of logical action in Transport Scotland could be doing. And I know officers via themselves have been sending representation on that front, but Gordon, you're going to take that forward.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to add on that point, which you guys pointed out, the concession usage not being not returning the way we'd hoped it has. I think you're absolutely right. We don't have definitive answers on that. Maybe got our own theories from experience, be it fear, be it the cost of living crisis. You're absolutely right. We don't know. That's the honest truth. And picking up the Chair's point, we don't even have the data to be able to look at it, because our government tells us it's probably not uniform. There'll be parts where concession usage has bounced back up to much more like pre-COVID levels. There'll be areas where I suspect it's much worse. But again, we don't know that. Transport Scotland hold that data every time someone taps a card on a bus. There's a beep. and repeat this also at Transport Scotland's offices, because that forms the payments to the operators thereafter. So we're into Transport Scotland in that regard, because the plan and to understand what's happening, you need to access the basic data that they'll have at present.
Neil, do you want to come into the 22s?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I the points the council actually made on the 22s are absolutely on the mark. I mean, the responsibility, we don't have a responsibility at all. It's with improvement service through to the local authorities. The results vary greatly across the country, across the technical authorities in terms of take up. The campaign starts next week, digital campaign next week, and I think the TV, the radio campaign, I haven't seen the details, but I believe it starts on 26th September. But as of next week, we are supporting improvement service and delivering this. So on an agency basis with improvement service, it's no small task. We're effectively doubling the size of our contact centre to do this. And the other goal will be to deal with the overflow calls for some local authorities that aren't able to the demand that comes from the campaign. So we're doing that supporting improvement service. It's a short-term project. It's probably going to be quite an intense project. As I say, I'm saying doubling the contact centre, but effectively setting up another contact centre for a period of around 8 weeks to support that work.
Okay, Malcolm, you want to come back in that?
No, that was very helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Kirsty.
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree with all the comments that have been made about the state flow and how that's not an option anymore. And so I suppose just on the back of that, I was quite interested to find out a little bit more about the detail in terms of, obviously we have a fragmented system, public transport, and therefore, if fares aren't capped, fares, even with fare caps, they don't apply across modes. It's always going to be more expensive for passengers to travel in a fragmented system, particularly if they want to travel in a way that's convenient. And so clearly, as has already been raised, the affordability and cost is a huge factor. So I suppose I just wanted to understand what work we are doing to demonstrate the needs case for reduced fares, for example. Obviously, ScotRail have announced a fare freeze, and we presumably have that power to do something similar, but we also have the power to be pushing and to be challenging and to be making the case for greater funding to reduce fares. So do we have any detail, and has a needs case been developed on that? And is there a possibility for any of that detailed work to be shared? And the same goes, I think, in my mind, when I'm reading the paper, I was interested to know some similar detail on the driver issue and driver retention. And obviously that's a challenge in terms of sustaining adequate services that we need to promote sustainable travel, to promote modal shift, and to develop the decent system that we all want. And so what strategies are being put in place to deal with this, the driver retention issue? Are we, is our needs case being developed to demonstrate the need for example, increased budgets to allow higher remuneration? And have we done a business case for more funding? I presume that there is detail on this, the SPT partnership have, but that's not immediately clear to me. So any detail on that would be much appreciated.
So in terms of the issue of driver retention and use.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you for the questions, Councillor Williams. In terms of the driver shortage, I think it's fair to say it's a huge shortage, and it's a national issue that's just became increasingly apparent during the COVID crisis. I was talking to Chair this morning, some of the background to that, and that testing for drivers was suspended during COVID, so it was the 4th point, and it was restarted on a more limited basis. So at a very basic level, getting new recruits into driving PCP qualified drivers was much slower than the normal entry into the industry. At the same time, the industry had an increase in the number of people leaving the industry through retirement. Principally also those choosing to go to other sectors. So all is just an obvious one. Like I said, PCB and HCB, so there's a crossing the knowledge industry. At the same time, we see college rates in terms of driver rates there really increasing significantly. Reports out 60,000 per annum this is 35,000 per bus. So there's definitely a number of challenges now linked to COVID. Having said that, there's historically a shortage of drivers as well. So there's another factor here, and that shortage historically has been covered through overtime. And again, one of the feedback from operators was that you've also seen them through their own operations, the willingness and able to actually pick up, overtime, particularly weekends, that evening type work, more challenging than it was. So it's like a perfect storm of factors leading to the current crisis and the current issue, shortage we've got across Scotland. In the kind of short term, what has SPT been doing to feed into that and support that? So there's been a national group established in Transport Scotland, people at Skills Development Scotland, various labour parts of the Scottish Government in there and feeding in, from the cold face, if you like, to what that means to our communities. So that if the buses were there, the impact on those communities if the guys were there to drive already. So feeding into that. We were also the first organisation to have our own jobs fair, specifically for bus drivers in January this year. We held that at the Cannon bus station with representation there from all the major local bus companies, and it garnered a lot of attention, and a number of them had their own individual events thereafter. So that's what we're doing in the short term. I think it's a good point in terms of the longer term thing, because there's a number of moving parts here. Certainly something I'm sure Bruce and colleagues will be looking at through the RTS, because skills and resources and having the right people with those skills and resources are challenging. The final bit I would say that I think is just thinking about the actual the bus driver's job, the challenges to see there, because the congestion we've got on the network, and some of that social behaviour that we've reported through operations committee and others, it's a challenging environment for these guys when they're out doing that. So I think there's a number of bits that we need to bring forward, and no easy answers to any of those.
Yeah, just before I bring in a question in terms of the transport per se, in terms of the staff numbers, and it's affected right across the board. And whereas it's not necessarily directly linked to SPT, but it is very much part of the default scenario that people can't get a bus because it's either pulled or it's not turned up because one of the staff is the provision of taxis. And my one authority was like a lot of authorities really concerned about the provision of taxi availability. On the public safety issue, single, if you're a woman, you're the one all the rest, and you can't get up because that bus is not turned up, or that train's been cancelled, or whatever. So there is a transport issue right across so many fields on that front. But I guess the bit, Bruce, in terms of the process, in terms of the RTS, and particularly in relation to where we get to in terms of course of direction for SPT, and particularly the buses, as I said before, the last cycle, the chairs did produce and agreed take forward was the transport for Strathclyde, which is dovetailed into that. But it might be worthwhile just kind of rehashing in terms of the Sunrise Reef and the cost stroke investment.
Yeah, well, thanks, Chair. Something, I thought it's the Transport for Strathclyde document that you guys prepared was really helpful in the debate on the bus. And I think that's really brought it out in the open, and you'll be aware, just as you're saying, we did some work with an organisation, Sister Consultancy, looking at the provisions of the 2019 Act. I'll maybe just very briefly run through them. So if you look at municipal bus operation, that means council or SPT running that. They said yes, that would make a difference in some areas, quite a big difference, but not in others. It would cost around about £200 million, and you could do that by 2030. In terms of franchising, just developing a business case for that would be between £4 and £15 million. Again, you can do that by 2030. Pausing on that for a moment, the consultants and the work that they did and examining best practice, etc., benchmarking elsewhere, franchising was what would deliver you a transformed network. You could really make a big difference with that. But when everybody talks about franchising, and I'll do the same, there's always that big up that comes with it, which is around the costs, the risks, essentially that come with the authority. I should have said that the same thing in municipals. In terms of bus service improvement partnerships, they could make improvements in some parts of the sector, bus sector, others they might not. A bit more simple to establish. We cost around about between 50 and 250,000 pounds a year to administer, and you can have one pretty much up and running by the next 12 to 18 months. The thing that's not, Chair, if you forgive me, just pausing on for a moment. The thing that's not really been picked up from the report, which is all on our website, and you can read the detail on there, is even if things stay the way that they are just now, nothing changed to do with the framework of us. The consultants and ourselves looked at what we would need based on the current model they have to get close to what you could call a world-class bus system. And that world-class system is based on what equivalent other city regions around Europe would have. Still be looking at £22.7 million additional revenue a year for supporting bus services. Just put that in perspective, ours is around £13 million a year, so that's pretty much tripling our budget on supported services. Also, in tandem with that would be £300 million capital, which would require to be invested in the West of Scotland network to get facilities, infrastructure, corridors up to standards. So huge question marks, even if we stayed with the current system we've got, never mind whether we move to another system. In terms of what's happening next year, as I say, we'll bring something forward to the Strategy Programmes Committee in November. Having completed the work with Sister, we requested that they do another piece of work for us alone. Previous work was done with the City Council jointly, just to say, okay, these are the conclusions, what would next steps look like, and what would a timeline look like. We're in the middle of reviewing that at the moment, Chair. We've not come to any conclusions in that for very specific reasons around the regional transport strategy, public consultation underway. We want to hear what people are saying, we want to give their views, and people, as you said, the TFS report said to be bold, ambitious. Right through the consultations we've had previously, people have told us to be bold, ambitious, and strong. See what the reality of that comes out as part of the consultation. Just on the bus drivers, Chair, we did mention in the RTS resources, obviously, very briefly, there's only a couple of paragraphs on it, I think, but it was talking around funding, it talked about resources, it talked about workers, it talked about skills, and again, look forward to what councils and operators say on that basis. I think absolutely it's something we need to look at. And just lastly, Chair, on the fares, obviously from the perspective of our services, that's something that Elan and ourselves keep on part of a close review in terms of the fare review that Transport Scotland are going to do. We've already committed to providing them with the work that we did on affordability of public transport as part of the development of the new RTS, and we'll obviously keep very close to them if we take that forward, and they are keen to work with us.
Thanks. So, yes, you want to come back in?
Thanks, Chair. I think, yes, it's helpful, and I can appreciate that lots of work is going on, and there are challenges, and we're all very aware of them, and we're on top of them. I suppose it's just my need for understanding what detailed kind of proposals we are drawing up in order to make that case for example, more funding, because we can't just keep saying, well, we don't have enough funding, or we need more funding. Presumably, we have to make quite a strong case based on our objectives. So I suppose, has that work been done, that detailed work been done? Has a needs case been done for example, retaining quality staff, or for lowering fares to make the network more accessible? And if so, how can we kind of understand that a little bit better? Because I think the broad picture is helpful, but I think we all need more detail to really know where things are headed. Because feel frustrated not having more info.
Well, yeah, Bruce.
Vice Chair, no, well, I would absolutely guide you to the RTS website, which has got all the information. There's lots of background reports there. You're talking about a needs case. We did the case for change. It's the most detailed case for change that's been prepared in Scotland for our region for many, many years. That gives a clear picture of what this region needs and what the regional transport strategy has to face. So there's impact assessments, there's background reports, there's the bus study I talked about, there's one of mobility as a service. All the detail is there in the SPT website. As far as what we do with that, prepare the draft RTS. The next stage for us, and this is what Gordon and I will cut out over the next few weeks, is bringing a proposal to the strategy and programmes committee in November, particularly in relation to bus, to say this is where we think it should go. That will lay out a programme, and that will lay out the type of options that we could consider. And again, as I said earlier, Chair, very much conscious and aware of not jumping to any conclusions, because we need to be objective, balanced, and evidence-based. We've got a good solid evidence-based. We've got the objectives there. We've got the backing of the councils and others to be strong, etc. We need to work through that process. The consultation is still live. The consultation doesn't end until the 28th of October. Responses are flowing in. From the public, the councils, union, and we look forward to reading them when they come through. And we'll make a value judgment based on that, where the strategy should go. And really importantly, just very briefly, we don't bring things to the partnership or any committees without doing a lot of work and making sure it's absolutely robust. It would be remiss of us to do that. So we will bring something forward in November. We say, oh, Gordon, the guys will work that through, and whatever it is will be a strong case for future investment in bus and business school.
Just to highlight and just clarify, SPT don't employ any bus drivers. For the
I was probably very much as a way at our own operation.
So just on that, we have seen, the market, the contractors are paying standard, and also the commercial market, understand that's accelerating quite rapidly at the moment in terms of some of the rates and also the time rates. So we're already seeing just to highlight that.
Something I said. Okay.
Yeah, that includes figures, I suppose, and content, if we can see that.
I think also the members might be interested in. At the end of the day, it's a partnership with both members to kind of shape that. So obviously we'll do the diligence and make sure the I's and T's are, and I think that's what I understand. The hurdles that are areas where we like give patient and otherwise, we need to be sure we get that done properly. But ultimately, we for both members to get a direction on things. So let's George and then Ed.
Thanks, Chair. It's really just a few comments based on the discussion. This has been a really good discussion, but it's been a really important discussion. And I'd like to support what Bruce has just said about what they're doing, because I think the paper for Transport for Strathclyde and also the regional transport strategy lays the basis for that detailed discussion. Things have to change. It's not going to help us, but this debate is going on across the UK in councils and transport agencies. And the problem is that it's kind of multivariate. It's the perfect storm. If I could remind members that bus decline, and Gordon will know this, bus decline has been going on for a long number of years pre-COVID. And we need to understand the reasons for that. Secondly, it has been affected by COVID. The point made about anxiety by Councillor Mitchell is a good one, that people are still anxious. And the point made by Councillor Wilson as well, that patterns are changing. And we know that one of the things that is very important to people is that if they're going to use a service, it has to meet, one, it has to meet their needs, and two, it has to be of value. And if patterns are changing, then we need to change with it to do that. So that that is impacting as well. The governance and powers we've just discussed that need to change. If we need to address what's going on here, that also needs to change. And the cost of living crisis is having an effect as well, because people are traveling less, they're spending less. So all of these things, and I think the last point, Chair, you raised yourself, and the point I've made before, is the way we value and model the services that the bus industry gives to our communities is not right. It's not equivalent to car modelling in terms of traffic modelling. And so if people are using buses, it has a knock-on effect in terms of less car trips, in terms of less emissions, in terms of less accidents, etc., etc. And that's not really valued, and social interaction as well. And that's not really valued. So yes, we need more investment. Yes, it needs to be modelled in a much better way to actually look at, as you say, Chair, investing in this very important, probably the most important in terms of a lot of our communities, transport service, rather than constantly looking at as a drain on public services in terms of subsidy. And so I think the basis has been laid with that excellent paper, Transport for Prescribed, and the RTS, but we need to push that forward. I think what's just been said by the councillor about actually, and Bruce as well, about drilling down that what needs to happen, what do we need to happen in the future, and the paper in November is going to be a really important time for us as well. I think SPT is in a great position to push that agenda forward. And I'm very happy to be part of that as part of this committee. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Ed?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to, I mean, we've been talking a lot about, very immediate issues and very pertinent ones for the transport user. But, we are a strategy group, and we should be also looking beyond the immediate problems. And where I'm sort of looking at and thinking about it at the minute is the impact on electric vehicles and technology moving forward. How is that going to, if those advances were available now, what would there be an impact on, for example, could it reduce fares? Is it cheaper to operate electric vehicles than it is? Now, I know obviously there will be high energy costs at the minute, whether that's going to be with us for a significant length of time is difficult to say, but do we have any view from the bus operators? Is that commercial information commercially sensitive, that we don't get anything that tells us, yeah, it's actually a lot cheaper to run an electric bus than a diesel bus, and all those sort of things that we have that may, may help push the issues, not the issues, but push our thinking beyond today's problems. And this might be actually, partially an operations committee discussion as part of a strategic committee discussion. But I think, what we might see from Bruce and the team in November, I mean, I hope it might include a little bit on that sort of future view. And also, with November happens to be the anniversary of COP26, right? COP27. What has been the sort of impact for this past year from the bus operators who are now operating significant electric fleets, such like, are they reliable? Do they provide a better service? All those sort of things would be interesting just to see if it could be included in that kind of discussion. But I don't want to give you more work with it. You've obviously got a lot to play, but maybe that information is available.
Thanks, Ed. To be honest with you, look at that agenda, that could be a committee on its own, because the amount of work that's in there is actually immense. But diverse batteries and buses.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Ed, for the question. We need to them in reverse order, starting with COP26. Reporting to the committee previously, SPT's involvement support for that. One of the key things we identified earlier national service delegates from city centre to the event, and we put in place a zero emission service for that with 26 electric buses which were already default up there. So, but that wasn't the most pleasing part of that service. We carried on there's 26 buses went into service on the Monday after the COP26, so they added to the complement of fleet there, and we've seen a a dramatic increase in the number of electric buses across our patch. Do I think they will materially change the operating cost of a bus? The challenge is the biggest cost probably the labour, and we've touched on at length this morning. So there may be benefits in terms of less moving parts than electric bus than there is compared to diesel. But we're still very, very early days. We've been running diesel buses for a long time. I was going to say donkeys years, but a long time to really work over. Electric buses will only have them for a few years. Their warranty generally these days for about 10 years from the manufacturers. So we'll need to see. I think the Chinese have been running fleets for longer and large volume. So there's a lot of learning to see how these play out in the market. I think though, again, go back to COP26 and the benefits of electric in terms of zero emission at source, certainly some support will require, which I'm pleased to see the rollout. The challenge that we have here is that there's not a product for every job at the moment. So the vehicles you see out there are large single decks, large single and double decks. We have routes where there's an area we need smaller minibus type electric vehicles. Market's not quite there for them yet, so there's more to come in this space, Chair.
Okay, because this I get, in terms of the RTS and that's also going to be captured within that.
Yeah, no, if the chair, absolutely, and I think it's the next agenda items are another good example of having to look at things in an integrated way. So whether it's the electric vehicle charging, again, massive area, you know, in terms of the potential costs there, who bears that cost, how that balances out with bus, Clyde Metro, active travel programme that's coming through Scottish Government, you know, 10% of our budget by the next couple of years. And what occupies our minds is how we can make all of these things work in a way which gets us to the place that we want to go and achieve the objectives of the regional transport strategy. So it's a good point well made and an ongoing challenge for this chair.
Okay. A lot of comments, questions.
Thank you. Sorry, I realised that we're probably going maybe under time, but it was just on the community bus fund and that being withdrawn now. That's news and that's disappointing to hear that. How does that affect SPT's plan in terms of utilising that fund and how we're progressing with ideas on that?
Let's just keep in the joint.
Yeah, so that, again, I think just touched on the fund. My understanding was to be £1 million, and that'll be spread across Scotland this year, potentially additional funding this year. So, you know, we're seeing the detail of that there. So I think that like it does significant funding, very small one. I understand this and perhaps more money in future years, but again, we'll need to wait and see the detail of that case. It doesn't, I would say it doesn't impact on our plans to build a strategy to go through the RTS at all. Again, we've touched on some of the all taken forward these types of schemes, so I think that's going to get a bit from that.
I think, obviously, it's just got to is, but, you know, in terms of making any comment, on that, I'd say the transport is pretty big for us in terms of level of support. If there's any sign of that being reduced or otherwise, I think obviously representation, but I think it doubles in detail. And
I think you just add that, you know, in terms of what we'd seen before it being cancelled was a mixed picture of what that money's potentially for. Is like community transport, community bus services, or indeed the development of something under the 2019 Act, which is a very wide spectrum. So yeah, we'll need to see that clarity when it comes to
Just to clarify, Chair, it's not being cancelled, it's not being withdrawn, it's being paused. That's what the set is. So when it will come back, I think something else is play, it'll be
want to keep an eye on. Okay. So okay, that was that discussion that so committee action is outlined in page 63 from the ID. Agree. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10, Clyde Metro and progress update at 65 to 68. Action 67, and Bruce, again.
Thanks, Chair. Not much more to add to the paper, Chair, to be honest with you. It really is just a factual update of the activity between Transport Scotland, ourselves and Glasgow City Council over the last few months since March, since the STPR2 was the consultation came out and was published. Just for information, Chair, section 2.1 there, the older or the previous members will recognise that. Put that in for any new members, just to explain what the metro is to people. That's the first question they always ask. That's the definition that's come out of the STPR. In essence, a complete, transformation, a step change, as you can see, in public transport provision in Glasgow, incorporating a whole range of different modes, be it bus, rapid transit, tram, light rail, metro rail, various other things across the board. So it's just important to emphasise that. It's the open label of paper, Chair. Milestones for the group moving forward. We've got the programme steering group on the 6th of October. We're actually working on the agenda for that just now. In fact, I've got a meeting at 12 o'clock about that. That'll be looking at a project initiation document for the metro. There will be in there as well some work on the client delivery group, which is like a working group for the metro around its remit and resource, and also and this will be crucial, high-level programme milestones for the next couple of years. So what we're going to be doing there. So this is the beginning, Chair, of a long process. I should also add, of course, that the SDPR2 final version of it hasn't been published yet. So that'll be October, November. I think that's coming out. Look forward to receiving that. So once that comes out, Clyde Metro will be official and work and really get going on that. But a lot of work in the background over the last 4 or 5 months, Chair, to get us to this point. So just an update, will be more forthcoming over coming years, I'm sure.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for your time check. David.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to see this paper coming to this committee, because this is one of the most important papers you'll see within SPT this year, because it's so important we are involved in, embedded in, and contributing to the Clyde Metro. It's the most exciting project going on in the west of Scotland, and I'm pleased to hear, Bruce, that we're in so deep there, and it will continue to be so. Good, Chair.
George.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with what Councillor Wilson's just said. A really exciting and a really important project. I suppose it's a part comment, part question. My experience when you've got a project of this size and this complexity, more than one council, Glasgow Airport, various others involved, is the governance of this and the management of this project is absolutely crucial. And I'm looking at Bruce here because that obviously still has to be worked out. But I would have thought SPT has to have a key role in all of this. It might be Glasgow City Council. I don't know Transport Scotland's role. All I'm saying is that this is one of the key areas, and one of the areas where these projects can fall down if there's not a clear structure and a clear leadership in terms of delivering this over the years to come. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, George. I've got to see Malcolm's raised hand. I'll just take Malcolm as well, and then we'll go back to Bruce. Okay, Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I certainly agree about the excitement around this project. Just 2 quick points. I think one of them I mentioned in the last item about the possibility of rail regionalisation. I think certainly, and obviously the answer came that it's been down the agenda for a while now. I think certainly from the plans I've seen that the real strong integration there's going to be in this between heavy rail and light rail. It may be the perfect time or the perfect impetus for rail regionalisation to maybe move back up the agenda. Second point is, and I'm fully conscious of the fact that it's still many years away from this, becoming operational, but we're moving in the direction of finally getting smart integrated ticketing across, the subway, rail and buses. So I think it's important that from the outset we make sure that whenever this comes into operation, that the integrated ticketing takes the Clyde Metro into account as well. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Bruce.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just in terms of George's point, absolutely. I mean, the governance is massive in this, George, and I think actually at the moment the way it works is Transport Scotland are taking the lead for just now. Obviously, it's through their STPR and SPT, Glasgow City Council and partners, and that's worked reasonably well to date. You're absolutely right. The number of players who could be involved in this, from operators through to the other councils, is absolutely huge. And so I know it's a focus of the group to make sure at each stage, as we work through this, we get that governance right. And it really comes on to the second point about rail regionalisation. When you understand, I mean, the way the metro is described there gives you a sense of the scale of the change that could be coming from it. As soon as you start to think about that, how that would work on the ground, naturally come back to that again, as George was saying, the point that George says, have we got the optimal governance framework within the west of Scotland to make the Clyde Metro and its aspirations and the regional transport strategy a reality? And again, that's a question that needs asked. When we for other RTS consultations, governance kept on coming up, people with concerns about it. And again, looking at the way this will work over coming years as far as the Clyde Metro goes, I know it will be top of people's minds, and making sure that we want this to work, we need to have not only the nice trams and the nice routes on the streets and whatever else, we need to have the power and control and everything else in the right place too. So it's very much at the forefront of our mind. The ticketing one,
Yeah.
say something.
Thanks. Actually, very simple. Councillor Mitchell, yeah, totally agree, and it will be a strong input from SPT. The Clyde Metro to work, it needs to have integrated ticketing. You can have all the infrastructure, you know, the services in place, but you've got to have ticketing discussion across all those modes.
It's a no-brainer. Okay, Kirsty.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, there's a lot of national kind of discussion. It's not always clear where things are with it, but on transport governance and on the roles and responsibility of all bodies that run our public transport, it's obviously a complex picture in this country. But I suppose it is quite an important thing to understand in terms of the Clyde Metro. Is there a working strand on this in terms of who might operate and run the Clyde Metro, and are SPT making any representations in that regard in terms of whether they might want to do so? So I suppose a little bit of understanding, if you have any, on what discussions are happening around that and what representations the SPT partnership are actually making to do that job.
Chris, you want to get back?
Yeah.
What do you aware this came and where it's now?
Just in terms of the metro, I think we're absolutely mindful of it, Councillor Burns, in terms of the way it will go, but it will be considered at the appropriate point in the process. I mean, it's really just as you can see from the report, very much about getting this up and running. The key question is always where's, you know, people ask us where's line one of the metro, we say we're not even at that stage yet. We need to get these processes set up in order that we can make the business case for it. From the wider point of the transport governance, there is, I represent the RTPs of Scotland, or the Transport Governance Review Group, Transport Scotland are doing a movement, a bit more movement than that now over this year compared with the last couple of years, to look at governance options as we move forward. So we'll keep bringing papers back to the partnership with that as we move on. It's still early days in that as well.
David, Christy, can I just say, I think there's certainly no doubt that we have the expertise in SPT to run something like that. Whether it'll come out of that's a different matter entirely.
Yes, I think it's fair to say that also the metro was initiated, it's pretty much a Glasgow Council initiative then. Too long after that, SPT was involved, and have been involved ever since. But yeah, KI, that's about it.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible just to ask to make a request that at future meetings, at the earliest opportunity, that we can get some report or discussion on this topic, because I feel it is obviously extremely key, but that it's very confused. It's very, very confused in terms of where the conversation is, what the proposals are, and what steps, where the trajectory is in terms of moving forward with all that work.
In terms of, it's pretty much still sits with Glasgow, but in terms of bringing regular updates, absolutely.
Then also, I'm sorry, I should have said in the strategic issues update, David mentioned this before, we will be looking to hold special kind of information sessions, discussion sessions with members as we move through the RTS process. We just want a chance to arrange those, and hope to arrange those as soon as possible over the next few weeks. In terms of this, that's the factual position as far as the point goes just now. As I said, this is the beginning of a long story. We'll do our best to keep you updated on it.
I've made this point because this is such a long process. Unless in the metro, we do bite-sized pieces that is more explainable and understandable. I think at the moment with Glasgow and membership, the big players at the moment because I think the airport rail link is all came about. So bite-sized pieces. You understand a bit better as well. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else, any comments, any questions? Nobody dispute. Okay, can we agree that the mention as outlined on page 67 is agreed?
Great.
Agenda item 11, last your search agreement, arrangements list for division of training. Training services 6972, committee action 70, Neil.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So this reports to the procurement of a 10-year training framework. The aim of the framework actually is to just ensure quick, efficient access to a range of training. It's a dynamic framework, as it describes in the report, which means that although there's a number of bodies, number of suppliers of training at this point, that doesn't mean that it can't be absolutely guaranteed in a 10-year period. So it will be. There's no value attached to the report either in terms of awards, and that's because each individual exercise will determine what value is. The categories are listed there in section 3 and also in appendix 1, and containing the list of providers as well. Only other point to bring out here is the supplier development programme, which is at the bottom of section 2 in the background. That's a body which is embedded within South Lanarkshire Council, and really they aim to try and build local capacity for suppliers to bid for contracts such as this. So we will be working with them specifically in terms of this contract, this framework. So the committee is asked to approve the appointments in appendix 1, but also noting that the framework itself and utilisation framework itself will be dependent on budget resource for the 10-year period. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Neil. Any comments, any questions on the screen? That's question. Can we agree the committee action as an outline on page 70 is that agreed?
So thanks, Chair. Thank you. Thank you.